లైట్ లేదా వరకల్ లైట్ లేదా కనపడ లైట్ బాడీ ఏమంటే చెప్పండి.
హలో హలో
సార్ మాట్లాడుతున్న స్టాప్ చేసిన రికార్డింగ్ అప్పుడైనా శోభ హలో అంటున్నాను.
కాదు ఇది వీడియో అసలు అక్కడ ఆడియో రావట్లేదు మరి బయట
పైన
అసలు బయట చూసే వాళ్ళకి రావట్లేదు.
వాళ్ళ ఆడియో ఏం చేస్తుంది మొన్న కూడా నేను సినిమా చేస్తున్నా వీడియో పెట్టి మాకు ఆడియో వినిపించట్లేదు ఏం చేయాలి.
నాకు ఒక్కసారి చెప్పారు
సరే నిశ్చయించండి.
Hello? Hello?
Sir, hello, sir. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, sir, very well. Shall we start the program? We're waiting for you.
Sure.
Yes, sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And it was recording also. I will send you recording later, sir.
Yeah, please.
Thank you, sir. We are proceeding to the program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A pleasant good morning to all of you, and a warm welcome to this enterprising gathering. On 24th of January, every year, the world is celebrating International Day of Education. In commemoration of this day, the Department of Economics is conducting this virtual conference. Let us start the program by invoking the blessings of Almighty. Ms. Shanti Priya of 3rd D HET will lead us into prayer.
అక్కడ ఉంది
Precious you, the Lord to give up Taking my sin, my cross, my shame, resting the pain, bless your name. You are my only Jesus, Lamb of God, worthy is your name. Jesus, Lamb of God, worthy is your name. When I fall down, you pick me up. When I am dry, you fill my cup. You are my all in all. When I fall down, you pick me up. When I am dry, you fill my cup. You are my all in all. Jesus, Lamb of God, worthy is your name. Jesus, Lamb of God, worthy is your name. Worthy is your name. Worthy is your name. Thank you, Shanti. Before we start the program, I request Dr.B.Josephin Rani, Head Department of Economics, to enlighten the gathering with the theme of the day, that is International Day of Education.
Respected NAGESWARA, Department of Economics, Planning and Quantitative Department students. A very good morning to all of you. First of all, I would like to mention that who are in the auditorium, if you have your cell phones, who are already logged in, kindly mute your cell phones. As she's asking me. So, mute your cell phones, otherwise you will be getting these sound effects. That's right. So, anyway, you are in the auditorium, you can very well listen to start talk directly from here, the live session. So, no need to log into cell phone when you are in the auditorium. Who are all listening outside, they will be listening. Okay? So if you are on the phone, what will happen now? All the laptop is here, mic is here, then there is a equal problem will be there. That's why all of you kindly mute your phones, otherwise switch off the phones, don't directly log into the program. Okay? Yeah. Education is a human right, a public good, and a public responsibility. The United Nations General Assembly proclaimed the 24th January as the International Day of Education in celebration of education for peace and development. This is the third International Day of Education, which they are going to celebrate on 25th January 2021. The theme for this year International Day of Education is Recover and Revitalize Education for the COVID-19 generation. Now it is a time to power education by stepping up collaboration and international solidarity to place education and lifelong learning at the center of all the economy. As Nelson Mandela put it that education is the most powerful lever which you can use to change the world. Hence, the significance to commemorate this day is that education is essential for the success of the 17th Sustainable Development Goals. Today, we are all fortunate that we are in this esteemed institution because 258 million children and youth do not attend the school and 617 million children and adolescents are unable to write and read. I think today for today's program, Professor Nageshwara, eminent resource person, not only in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, but all over India, in fact, I say all over the world. Sir, thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Apart from his busy schedule, and today sir will be speaking on the topic called Art and Science of Learning. So I would like to conclude with the words of the late Srimati Indira Gandhi, the former Prime Minister of India. Education is a liberating force, and in our age, it is also a democratizing force, cutting across the barriers of caste and class, smoothing out inequalities imposed by birth and other circumstances. So I request all of you listen carefully to the Shastra, and you can interact with later after he completed his work. Then you can ask for doubts, you can ask for clarifications, and I sincerely appeal to you, make use of the time and make use of the knowledge what he is going to put. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam, for enlightening the students about the importance of International Day of Education. Now, I invite Dr. K.Swaroop, Senior Faculty from the Department of Economics, to introduce resource person of today's webinar, Professor K. NAGESWARA GARU, Professor, Politician, and Political Analyst, to the gathering.
Good morning, all of you. I give it an honor to introduce our esteemed guest, Sri Professor N. Nageshwar. Sri Professor N. Nageshwar Garu is an extraordinary person with multifaceted career. Born in Manchirala in AP, he took his bachelor's degree in science from City College, Hyderabad, and his master's in journalism from Usmania University. He got his doctorate in political science from the same university. He won the elections to the Legislative Council from the Graduates Constituency of Hyderabad, Mahabubnagar and Rangareddy districts, first in 2007 and subsequently in 2009, contesting as an independent candidate. He defeated the candidates belonging to major political parties. Earlier, he worked with Indian Express and the Times of India groups. During the last 3 decades of journalistic experience, he published articles in the leading newspapers and magazines like the Hindu, the Indian Express, Deccan Chronicle, the Pioneer, the Economic Times, Outlook, Frontline, Economic and Political Weekly, etc. He regularly comments on Telugu channels and YouTube channel on wide-ranging issues of contemporary nature. Leading websites like First Post and India Times published his articles. He received the Junior Research Fellowship in Journalism in 1986. He won the UGC Career Award in 1994. But again, it's not enough, girls. Please, I want a big applause. He has been the visiting professor at Birla Institute of Technology and Sciences, BITS Pilani, and BITS Hyderabad also, and the National Academy of Administration, Mussoorie, which is a training institute for the new recruitees of civil servants, and National Police Academy, training institute for IPS officers, formerly it is called as APA, and Dr. Marichala Reddy Institute of Human Resource Development, and is a regular visitor of journalism schools and NALSA. He is former editor of Hans India English Daily. He was earlier the editor-in-chief of Telugu News Channel HMTV. He is the author of books interpreting contemporary India, How to Win a Life. In spite of being a person with many feathers in his cap, he is down to earth. He groomed many students who are now in envious positions. Though he hasn't taken a degree in economics, he has mastered the subject and answered the queries at very ease. He is a voracious reader and up to date about the happenings of the four corners in the globe. He is also a great orator. We are very fortunate, sir, to have you in our midst. Once again, I welcome you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Now I request Professor NAGESWARA GARU to take the session.
Well respected principal, head of the Department of Economics, respected faculty members, and my dear students. It is certainly a pleasure to be part of this International Education Day celebrations. It would have been much more fascinating if I were physically present at this great institution. I know this college right from my childhood days, where some of my classmates have been admitted to this college in intermediate. So it's an institution of outstanding eminence, and I'm really happy to be part of this International Education Day celebrations. It's always a pleasure to speak to the young minds, students, because who are definitely more resourceful and more energetic than people of my generation. So at the outset, I seek the apology for being compelled to speak from an online platform, but I shall certainly look forward for another occasion to be physically present in your college to interact with you directly. Coming to the topic of the day, as it has been rightly pointed out by the head of the Department of Economics, so the education is a human right, education is a public good. Education, several great thinkers have talked many things about education. The eminent English writer H.G. Wells said, the history of human civilization is a race between education and catastrophe, which essentially means if there is no education, there is only a disaster. The World Bank and the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, said education is an enterprise of development. So education results in not just the development of an individual, but development of the society at large. Amartya said, comparing the trajectory of development of India and China post-liberalization, made a very interesting observation in several books like India Development and Participation, India Economic Development and Social Opportunity, the Argumentation Indian, Development as Freedom. In many of these works, Amartya gave a lot of empirical evidence, presented the link between education and development. He was comparing the post-liberalization experience of the India and Chinese economy. The Amartya Sen concludes that the post-liberalization economic miracle in China is a result of pre-reform achievements in the field of education, health, and other areas of human development. So this clearly established a relationship between education and development. Look at I will again give you another experience, a contrast between East Asia and Latin America. At a point of time in history, both East Asia and Latin America had a demographic advantage. But Latin America, being under the colonial regime, could not invest in the human resources and prosper. On the contrary, the East Asian economies like South Korea invested in human resources, invested in education, and became a very powerful economies in the course of time. This is what the United Nations studies and the World Bank studies also reveal. So it has been established without any controversy, with all substantial research findings, that there is a clear correlation between education and development. In fact, girl child education is much more important because studies, comparative studies between Kerala and China also reveal that what China has achieved in terms of the low fertility comparable to the advanced countries and their significant achievements in human development were rather by compulsion or by pressure or force. On the contrary, Kerala has achieved much better results through female education. So the studies in Kerala reveal a close correlation between female education and low fertility rates, better child care conditions, and better achievement in the human development. So therefore, there is a body of literature, there is enormous empirical evidence in the field of economics to suggest that education plays an important role in the economic growth of a country and economic development of a country. It is more so in a knowledge economy. For the benefit of the students, let me tell you what is knowledge economy. Knowledge economy is a particular phase in the transition of an economy where knowledge becomes a productive force. Assuming that you were in an agricultural economy and you are a daughter of a 100-acre landlord, even if you are not intelligent, you will obviously be, or you are yet another girl who is daughter of a agricultural labor. Even if she is much more brilliant than you, her economic condition will not be better than you. Therefore, in an agrarian economy, your prosperity is not determined by your knowledge level. It is determined by your asset accumulation. Similarly, the case with the industrial economy, where a worker's son will remain a worker, where the proprietor's son or a proprietor's daughter will obviously become the proprietor. But knowledge economy rides this kind of situation. If you have the knowledge, even if you do not have the economic resources, you can still conquer the world. The stories of Sundar Pichai and several successful people reveal this. Sundar Pichai was an ordinary middle-class child who used to travel on the roads of Chennai, sitting on the back of his father's scooter, and he has grown to become the CEO of the world's powerful company. So this was essentially possible through an education. I was the son of an ordinary school teacher, that to a family of 4 children, without any ancestral property, not even an inch of land, not even a small building. He lived in rental accommodation. But today I can become what I am essentially because my parents could afford me education. My parents had the kind of foresight and reason to get me educated. So education does transforms our lives. Let me quote the World Bank report, Knowledge-Based Global Societies. In this report, the World Bank says economies are not merely built by the physical and natural resources. Economies in the knowledge-based global societies of the 21st century are increasingly built upon human resources. So therefore, human resource is the mark of development. So this is a part of the lecture to establish the relationship and positive correlation between the levels of education and levels of development. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the father of Indian Constitution, said, the progress of a society can be gauged by the progress the women of the country have achieved. So this shows a close correlation between women's development and overall economic growth. And there's a close correlation, as I was explained, from the empirical studies in Kerala and elsewhere in the world, that female education is a key component of education. And therefore, even Amartya Sen in his work on girls' education says, despite its drawbacks and lapses in the education system, still a educated woman has the capability to fight the social stereotype and the socially oppressive conditions that characterize our society. So, for education is significantly important in any country's development, and more so the development of a girl child and woman. So this is a factor which we have to think, and we have to rededicate ourselves for the cause of the girl child education. And I really appreciate the Stella College for making a stellar contribution in the field of female education. So this, coming to then the question comes is, what is education and what is learning? Education is not just information. There is a wrong notion of education. Education is often confused with the levels of information you have. Education is often interpreted as acquisition of information. Information acquisition, especially in the knowledge economy, is no longer education. Well, that may be the first stage of education. If you really know how many crops are grown in India, and what is the level of acreage, what is the production level, that is information. But why India still continues to grow paddy and wheat? Why not India grow other crops? Why the productivity of Indian agriculture is still very low? Why the terms of trade in agriculture are against the farmers of this country? That is education. So education is not merely information. Swami Vivekananda several years ago said, education is not information, education is knowledge. What is the difference between information and knowledge? I gave you one example from the agricultural economy. So if you know, I'll give you yet another example. 1%, according to the Oxfam report, 1% of Indians own more than 50% of India's income and wealth. Well, this is information. But what is education? Why these humongous inequalities in the Indian economy? Why post-liberalization Indian economy has witnessed widened inequalities? How inequalities impede the path of development and progress? If you can find answers to these questions, or if you can at least ponder over these questions, that becomes the knowledge. So information is not education. Knowledge is education. For a simple child, you can tell your nephew or niece or a sister or brother, what is education? If somebody asks you 2 into 3, if you say 6, it is information. Why can't it be 5 or why can't it be 7 is knowledge. So first of all, education is not just information. Unfortunately, our syllabi specific, examination oriented, classroom confined education system has degenerated education to a level of information acquisition. That too, information from the textbooks alone. This has to be changed. So education is not just the confines of the information world, it goes beyond, transcends beyond the world of information and gets into the world of knowledge. So how do we acquire knowledge? This is the next question which we have to put before us ourselves. So knowledge can be acquired if you can know the art and science of learning. So learning is not acquisition of information. Learning is something beyond acquisition of information. So what is the art and science of learning? So I come to the exact topic of today's my lecture. So learning takes place, knowledge acquisition takes place through learning. And what is the science of learning? Learning, as Madam has rightly pointed out, learning is a lifetime activity. Learning doesn't end and doesn't begin with your education, doesn't end with the education. Look at the kid, look at a small girl or a boy in your own house. How does that boy or girl learn? How do they pick up language? How do they pick up manners? How do they pick up human interactions? Even before the child enters the school, a lot of things the child learns. So the child learns even before joining the formal stream of education. In fact, there are thinkers who say that education is not a learning process. Unfortunately, education has become an unlearning process. You are not learning, but you're losing what you have already learned. So we have degenerated education to that level. So the learning process is a lifetime activity. Many people stop reading the moment they're employed, precisely because they confuse learning with that of job attainment or learning with that of education. Learning goes beyond education. And learning is an activity of not just educated. A farmer learns how to grow crops. A toddler learns how to walk. Mother teaches the children how to cook. So your mother has not trained in any hotel management school. She has not learned in a hotel management school. Your grandmother has not learned in a hotel management school, but she cooks much better than any trained catering graduate. So it is precisely because she has learned through her lifetime experience. So the first thing is learning by observation. You look at the world, even many concepts of economics can be learned through the process of observation. I have learned economics precisely through the process of observation. So I have not learned, as a child, I used to go to the farmers' fields and see how they are getting prices. I used to ask my farmer, why are you not selling your produce in the village? The farmer used to take the produce to the nearby town. So I used to ask him, why don't you sell in the village itself? Then the farmer used to teach me, I get less when I sell in the village, but I get more when I sell in a town. So that is how the agricultural markets fetch better price for the farmer. Then the farm I used to tell, why do you sell only the mangoes? Why can't you sell the mango pickle? So I used to ask the farmer. The farmer used to say, we don't know how to make a pickle. But it was always surprising to me, what is the price of mango and what is the price of a mango pickle? So this taught me the lessons in the value addition. In economics, the value addition process is essentially a process of economic development. The value chains, look at the global supply chains. Look at the value chains. If you want a country to prosper in the post-globalization world, the only way you have to be part of a global value chain. So today we're talking about global value chains. So this you can learn through your observation. Look at your own mother. She's a very good management expert. Assuming that she doesn't have the sufficient vegetables of any particular kind, she combines all of them and cooks a mixed vegetable curry. So that is nothing but the resource planning in economics. That's nothing but the management in economics. Your grandmother was not taught economics. She might have been not taught management science, but she manages the resources in the family kitchen. She manages the economic resources in the family kitchen much better than any graduate from a business school. So this indicates that learning is a process of observation. If you closely observe the world around you, you will understand the basic principles of economics. I used to, if you look at your own house, observe your own house, as your parental income expands, your consumption increases. Well, if your parent is not economically strong, your levels of consumption will be less. As your parental income increases, you consume more goods and services. It teaches the basic principle of economics. Put money into the hands of the people, and once there is an income in the hands of the people, it creates the demand in the economy. Demand leads to production. Production leads to again employment. And this is a virtuous cycle of economic growth, which the economic survey talks about. So this reveals that your own observation around your own family and outside can teach you many principles of economics, which a textbook or a classroom may not teach. Right? Unfortunately, we, the students of modern education, think that education and learning takes place only in the classroom, only in the library, only in the laboratory. But learning takes place in a life event. Learning takes place in a life situation. Learning takes place in a life context. So learning is an eternal process. It's a constant process. By observing the world around you, you can really relate many concepts of economics or concepts of any other subject with what you are actually doing and seeing and working around you. So this is the first thing. So learn through observation. Try to observe the society around you and try to sharpen your understanding of economics. Today, Abhijit Banerjee, Raghuram Rajan, Geeta Gopinath, all these economists are telling, put money into the hands of the people, enhance the income levels, because India's economy is facing through a crisis, essentially because of the falling private consumption. Today, private consumption accounts for 50-55% of India's GDP, where the government expenditure accounts for only 13% of GDP. Economic growth or GDP, essentially driven by A, private consumption, B, government expenditure, C, investments, D, exports. And in that, private consumption expenditure is a key component of economic growth. Studies by the National Sample Survey Organization reveal that low levels of consumption or falling consumption expenditure has triggered economic slowdown even before the onset of the pandemic. So therefore, this understanding of the link between consumption and economic development, income and consumption, is a concept which may be complex when you read in the textbook, when you listen to your teacher in the classroom. But when you observe your own home, as your parental income increases, your levels of consumption automatically increase. We never used to go to a hotel when I was newly married, but we started going to a small dhaba after 5 years. Now in the law, we celebrated our 30th marriage day, and my son offered me a treat at Hotel Marriott. So how did this happen? Because our economy started expanding. So as our economy expands, our levels of consumption of goods and services obviously expand. So this is what you observe in your house and what you actually study in a textbook. So this is the first point, learning through observation. Number 2, learning through questioning. So always learning takes place by questioning. The moment you stop asking questions, you obviously stop learning also. In fact, the history of science also reveals that the knowledge advancement occurred through the questioning. The parable goes, Newton was sitting under an apple tree, an apple fell on him. If I were there, I would have certainly looked up for another 2 or 3 more apples. But Newton did not look up. He asked a very mischievous question. Why should this apple fall down? Why can't it go up? This led to the discovery of Newton's law of gravitation. So believe me, friends, ask many questions as you ask. There may be mischievous questions. There may be irresponsible questions. There may be frivolous questions. But do not stop questioning. So if you continuously ask questions, you will definitely acquire a lot of knowledge. So whatever you study, I hope you will also question me. Always question. In fact, the noted historian Ramila Thapar said, the role of a public intellectual is to seek explanation for the public actions. So a public intellectual is someone who always questions the people in authority. So learning takes place through questioning. If you ask a proper question, half of the knowledge battle has already been won. So asking a pertinent question, asking a proper question, even if tomorrow you grow and do research, the research begins with a question. Research begins by answering the gaps in the knowledge process, the gaps in the understanding of a phenomenon, whether it is social, physical, or natural. So if you continuously ask questions on the gaps in the social phenomenon, that itself is a social research. So the research methodology tells you is to ask a research question. So learning through questioning is the second thing. Third, learning through learning through argumentation. Many people stay away from argument, but argument is an important tool of learning. If you are only reading for yourself, you may not encounter many facts, you may not explore many facts. But when you are confronted by someone else, when someone else questions you in an argument, you will realize the lapses in your understanding. You will realize the gaps in your understanding. You will realize the unsubstantiated hypothesis in your understanding. So unless somebody argues with you, somebody questions you, you find it extremely difficult to really explore more. So never hesitate to argue. That doesn't mean arguing like Arnab Goswami TV shows. That doesn't really help. That is not argumentation. Do not think that the television shows which we see every day morning, they are not argumentation. They are essentially shouting matches, as Ramila Thapar pointed out. I'm not talking about argument in terms of the shouting matches played every day on the morning television, but argumentation with a reasonable, logical frame of mind. So, if two students sit together, try to ask questions, try to take a topic, for example, try to take topic why inflation is rising in a period of economic slowdown. Normally, when there's an economic growth, when there's more consumption of goods and services, obviously the inflation occurs. Inflation can be tolerated when there's economic growth. But when there is an economic stagnation and economic slowdown, inflation proves to be lethal. Economists call it as stagflation, where there's a combination of stagnation and inflation. Suppose you are talking about, if two students sit together, instead of talking and discussing about crack movie, which you can almost do it, I'm not against it, but discuss and argue. Let someone talk in favor of inflation. Let someone talk against inflation. Let there be an exchange of thoughts and exchange of ideas and exchange of argument. So learning through argumentation is an effective technique, and Indian philosophical tradition stands testimony to this great process of knowledge acquisition. If you read Amartya Sen's book, The Argumentative Indian, he explains how varying philosophical traditions in India argued with each other. India has several philosophical traditions: Dvaita, Advaita, Vishishtadvaita, Sankhya, Yoga, Mimamsa, Bauddha, Jain, Buddhist, Jain, and about Charvaka. So there are several other forms of philosophical tradition on Indian soil, and these philosophical traditions converse with each other, confronted with each other, argued with each other to create a body of philosophy which is unique and which we are proud of as an Indian. So this shows that argumentation is an essential instrument of knowledge acquisition. This is the third thing. Fourth thing is go beyond what you see and what you read. So you have to analyze and have this appetite. Learning is a pleasure. In fact, I'll give you an anecdote from the life of Socrates. Socrates was given a death sentence. At the time, death sentence was implemented by forcing someone to drink poison. So the time has come for the Socrates to be administered poison. So in another 2 hours, Socrates asked to drink poison and died. And at the time, the jail officers came to Socrates. Socrates was watching a beggar playing a very interesting instrument. From his window, he was watching that beggar playing the instrument. So the jail officials came and asked Socrates. There is a practice in the world to ask the last wish of the person who is to be hanged, who is to be killed. So the jail officials asked Socrates, "What is your last wish?" Then Socrates said, "Can you bring that beggar to me?" Well, the jailers were simply surprised and brought the beggar in front of Socrates. Socrates told the beggar, "I'm really amazed by your singing and playing that instrument. Can you teach me? I want to learn to play that instrument." Then the beggar taught him for 1 hour. Socrates learned it, and he learned it and played that instrument, and the beggar left. The jailer was curious. The jailer asked Socrates, "What is the advantage you have? You're going to live for only another 1 hour. What will you do by learning this instrument now?" Then the Socrates said, "The meaning of life is learning. So there is no life without learning." So even a hour before he was subjected to death sentence, Socrates had the pleasure and appetite to learn. Then what about you and me? So when Socrates knows that he is no longer going to live after 1 hour, and whatever he has learned will not be put to use also. But Socrates had the appetite and had the pleasure to learn. So learning is a pleasure. Learning, you should have a thirst for knowledge. You should have that hunger for knowledge. So when you have the thirst for knowledge and hunger for knowledge and an appetite for knowledge, you will learn. And that you will have to look beyond what you see. Quite often, you read students, especially for the benefit of students, you read the headlines in newspaper. But how many times you thought beyond the headlines? Yesterday's newspaper, you might have read, stock market touches 50,000 mark. Just introspect. How many of you have thought why this stock market touched 50,000 points? So once you have that kind of an attitude or an aptitude to look beyond the headlines, look beyond what you read, look beyond what you see, obviously you will gain enormous knowledge. I also, like you, read the news. Stock market touches the record 50,000 points. I was very, very curious. Why did it touch 50,000 points? Before why, I had a question, how did it touch? Then I have realized that in March 2020, the Sensex was at 25,000 odd. So it now touches around 50,000. There was a 92% rise in the Sensex. So this is how did it touch? Then my curiosity increased. Why did it touch? Why did the Sensex grow so rapidly in the last 9 months? Despite the pandemic, economy is growing at a rate of minus 24% in the first quarter of this financial year. And the economy is expected to be in the negative growth trajectory of minus 7.5% in this fiscal too. Still, why the stock markets grew by 92%? Why there is no link between the real economy and the stock markets? So as I became curious, I started reading, I started studying, I started doing research, I started exploring, and thus my knowledge of stock markets expanded. And I realized at least 4 or 5 factors have contributed to this rapid rise in the stock markets. One, the the global liquidity. Then comes the question, what do you mean by liquidity? So always never satisfied unless you have an understanding of particular thing. So what do you mean by liquidity? Liquidity means in economics cash in hand. There's a flow of money in the global market. Then comes the question, why is there a flow of money in the global markets? Then it is essentially because the United States and the European economies have been implementing the policy called quantitative easing. Then comes the question, what is quantitative easing? Quantitative easing essentially means the central banks print currency and pump it into the economy in a bid to give a stimulus to the economy when the natural stimulus due to consumption doesn't exist. So there is cheap money, cheap liquidity in the global economy, and the cheap liquid money is coming into the emerging markets, including India. Then comes the second question: why is Indian stock market growing when Indian economy is not growing? It is essentially because of the foreign investment flows. Foreign investment flows, how much are coming? $4 billion every month, especially since May. From November, it has further increased. So why FPI flows are coming? Because there are low interest in advanced economies. When there is low interest there, obviously these foreign portfolio investment always descend on economies where there is a better rate of return. So this is how I started understanding the phenomenon of Sensex touching 50,000 mark. So this is an example of how do you gain knowledge? How do you acquire knowledge? How do you learn a subject? You can only learn, the learning begins with an attitude and aptitude to go beyond what you read, to go beyond what you hear, to go beyond what you see. And that is the process of learning. Well, unless you have an appetite for that kind of a process, unless you derive pleasure from gaining knowledge, it is not just possible. So you have to be very, very curious in your life. You should be so curious that you will never satisfy with what you have, what you learn. So that is called learning through the process of looking beyond what you read, what you see, and what you understand. Then learning through interaction, learning through experience. Experiential learning is much more powerful learning. You will find many great successful people without a great academic background. Steve Jobs created Apple without any sound academic background. Mark Zuckerberg was a Harvard College dropout. Still, he could create Facebook. Well, of course, subsequently he joined Harvard University to get a degree after several years. Bill Gates is a college dropout. That doesn't mean you will also grow if you are a college dropout. Never take such lessons from this understanding. It happened with only a couple of people. Bill Gates himself warned against not taking studies seriously. So Bill Gates, who was the author of the book, The Business at the Speed of Thought. So Bill Gates said, I am not a gold medalist from any top university, but the gold medalist of the world's best universities work under me. So what does it indicate? It indicates a disconnect, perhaps, between academics and the success in life. But it is not a disconnect. But there is another connect to it. Apart from the academics, experiential learning. Steve Jobs through experience learn. Mark Zuckerberg through experience learn. Bill Gates through experience learn. So there are many great farmers and illiterate farmers doing wonders than agricultural scientists. It is precisely because of the principle called experiential learning. So learn through experience. Unfortunately, our education system doesn't teach us learning through experience. If you want to teach botany to a school-going child, you draw the plant on the blackboard and talk about photosynthesis. Instead, the child should be taken to the open space in the school and let the child sow a seed, and as the seed grows into a plant, photosynthesis has to be taught. but we don't have that kind of a patience to be taught. So we have to transform, we have to come out of the classrooms, we have to come out of the laboratories, we have to come out of the libraries and get into society to learn through experience. And finally, learning through interaction. Human interaction, social interaction teaches you many things which universities, great universities do not teach. So, so this is the basic thing, because as you interact with the people, you will learn. I'll give you a very interesting anecdote in my life and stop my lecture. I was a student staying in the university hostel when N.T. Ramarao, the then Chief Minister of United Andhra Pradesh, was removed unceremoniously and unconstitutionally by the then governor called Ramlal. So Ramlal said Ramarao doesn't enjoy the majority and removed him from the office. So Nadalla Bhaskar Rao was administered oath as the Chief Minister. The sweeper in my hostel, who is illiterate, absolutely illiterate, so he has come to me and asked, "Sir, I have a question." Then I asked him, "What is your question?" "Sir, who will know the depth of a well?" I said, "Well, I don't know, why are you asking this question?" No, my question is, who will know the depth of the well? Only two people can know the depth of the well. Someone who dug the well or someone who got into the well. Someone who is on the ground and looks into the well, can he tell the depth of the well? I said, he can't. You're right. He has to either dug the well, or he has to go into the well to experience the depth of the well. Sir, that is what I am asking. Governor is not in assembly. How will you know that Ramarao doesn't have a majority? I was simply shocked by his wisdom. Precisely the same thing Supreme Court said in the S.R. Bommai verdict, called floor test. So the majority of a chief minister has to be tested only on the floor of the house. This is what the Supreme Court said in the S.R. Bommai case. This is what the Sarkaria Commission said. And in fact, the sweeper in my hostel said this much before Honorable Supreme Court has really said. He has said much before Justice R.S. Sarkaria recommended in his report on center-state relations. So that is called native wisdom. Social interactions, human interactions, going to the places, speaking to the people, talking to the world and people around you teaches you more things which perhaps even the textbooks, even the libraries, laboratories, and colleges may not teach you. So this is the process. I told you some of the aspects of learning. Learning through observation, learning through argumentation, learning through questioning, learning through experience, learning through interaction, learning by going beyond what you see, what you read, and what you hear, and what you look at. So these are some of the principles of learning which I have not learned by reading any book. Frankly speaking, I have not learned this by reading any textbook or listening to a teacher in educational psychology. I have learned this by reassessing, by looking back at how did I learn. Well, I am a journalist by training, a teacher by profession, and was a legislator by accident. But I am a student by my character and nature. I want to be a lifelong student and eternal student. As has been introduced, I am an electronics graduate, postgraduate in journalism, doctorate in political science, and taught economics at the Billa Institute of Technology Sciences. So my wide interdisciplinary background is essentially because of the appetite. I wrote and spoke on every subject except perhaps sports and cinema. Very rarely I did it. So even today I read Constitution and economics with equal fervor. For the benefit of students, I am telling with all humility, I read economics and Constitution with an equal interest, though you may not find an immediate close correlation between the two. So what you learn is always has to be interdisciplinary. Children, I want to tell you, this is a multidisciplinary world. In knowledge is no longer compartmentalized. Knowledge is integrated. Biology interacts with information technology to create a new branch of science called the bioinformatics. Politics interact with economics to create political economy. Politics interact with sociology to create political sociology. Sociology interacts with psychology to create social psychology. Nanotechnology is a combination of several technologies. So the world is increasingly becoming multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, go beyond the frontiers of your own disciplines and have the appetite, have the appetite for learning, you will definitely be a successful human being. So with all good wishes to the children and my regards, respectful regards to the faculty, I once again thank the college and the Department of Economics in particular for giving me this opportunity to speak on the International Education Day. Thank you very much, friends.
I can't.
Thank you very much, sir, for enlightening our students by throwing insights on different aspects of education. Thank you, sir, once again.
Thank you, madam.
Now, the floor is open for interaction. Students, if you have any doubts, you can ask sir.
Shubham, we are not saying no. Anything they can.
Students, you can ask your doubts on any topic.
Sir can answer under the screen.
Sir can answer on any topic.
Please, faculty also, please. Sir.
Yeah, please.
Into the teaching field. So we are. Can you please suggest the teaching faculty to motivate the students into multidisciplinary aspects? How we can motivate them? Any tips from your side to motivate the students into multidisciplinary aspects?
Well, I think we should, the biggest problem is I've seen in many colleges, our own department do not interact with each other. I don't know about your college.
Yes,
So,
sir. Actually, one more your question here, sir. The faculty itself sometimes have boundaries like we are from quality, we are from social, we are from economics, like this, some boundaries are there, sir. Even I want the faculty, I mean the tips to the faculty also to come out of that boundaries and how we can motivate each other to come out of the boundaries.
First of all, quite unfortunately, we are more loyal to our own subject. We don't appreciate the importance of interdisciplinary learning. So we have to, that's a mindset which many faculty members have. So the colleges, the institutions should encourage more and more interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary interactions. You can read online when Guru met Albert Einstein. Rabindranath Tagore, a man of letters, met Albert Einstein, the 20th century greatest physicist. And their interaction really is wonderful. You can read it online also. So that kind of an interaction should be made part of an institutional arrangement. Quite unfortunately, that doesn't happen at many places. Outside my own college, But my Department of Economics has never invited me to speak to the economics students. You'll be surprised to know that. And despite telling this many times also, they have never invited me. So that shows we live in silos. We have to break these silos. The syllabi has to be, the new education policy talks about it. So the syllabi has to be, and the course curriculum has to be flexible and enough for a seamless transfer. For example, the Triple IT recently, Hyderabad Triple IT, started a dual degree course, B.Tech Engineering with MSc Social Sciences. So they are giving 2 degrees. An engineer, you will be a graduate in computer science, and you will be also a graduate in social sciences. So similar is the BITS Hyderabad. BITS Hyderabad as a dual degree course. Someone can study MSc Physics and MSc Economics. Somebody can study engineering and economics together also. Because I taught issues in Indian economy in BITS Hyderabad campus. So internationally, this is the trend today where people learn more than one subject. So, but the conventional education is yet to undergo this change. So the initiative should come from the college management and academic leadership of the college to foster this multidisciplinary courses, multidisciplinary seminars, multidisciplinary classrooms, and multidisciplinary faculty and interactions also. Number 2, multidisciplinary research has to be taken up, projects have to be taken up. And first of all, you should understand, as a faculty member, we should understand, a student doesn't have only one interest. It is wrong to think that we have only one interest. I love chemistry, I love economics, I love political science, I love mathematics. So my love for mathematics and chemistry did not deter me from loving political science and economics. In fact, I love Telugu literature also. I love psychology. So every human being has multiple areas of interest. So we have to realize that every child has multiple forms of interest. So that once you realize, then the problem will go. But we have a unidirectional, unidimensional view of the world around. So we have to come out of that unidimensional view of the world.
Good morning, sir. And sir, since most of our students are civil service aspirants, and most of them, they don't, they study something and they are, while entering into the civil services, their options will be different. I want you, at what juncture they have to select a subject. Because, see so many students, they study maths, physics, chemistry, and some B.Tech or medicine, and after that they don't opt those subjects in the civil services. Why is this paradox? Is it because of lack of planning, or what else? If it means at what time they have to select a civil service subject? Is it because of lack of planning in the profession? Or what else? What is happening? What is this paradox? Please, can you explain to us?
Well, you are right. In fact, it is a major trend, but there are also, I know many people, I know many aspirants who have passed, who have successfully got through the civil services with economics as an optional, with medicine as an optional, with mathematics as an optional, with the subject which they have studied at the graduate and postgraduate level as optional. But the trend is relatively less. It is essentially because of many factors. Because our education system compels us to choose a subject after 10th class. So obviously, after completing school education, the child is not mature enough, and the parents are not even mature enough to guide them into a particular stream with their interest. So obviously, especially in the Telugu states, you are compelled to go into either MPC or BPC. So that is the filtering that is taking place. Secondly, the middle class mindset Obviously, civil services can be an aspiration, but it is a highly competitive examination and nobody can give you guarantee. So you need something to fall back. The middle class economy compels you to think about falling back. So sciences, technology, engineering, mathematics to some extent, which we call it as the STEM courses. So STEM courses have a greater employment potential compared to social science courses. So if you are very good at economics, you can be equally better in life. But in engineering, even if you are not very good, you can still have a decent life. So this is the fundamental difference. So as a result of the kind of economy in which we are living, STEM courses have a reasonably higher employment potential. So middle class families choose STEM courses so that they will always have something to fall back. So you cannot exactly find fault with them. Then the third aspect is inability to figure out which is quite interesting because of the multiple interests. As I told you, I have enormous interest in mathematics and political science. I have enormous interest in chemistry and economics. So when you have interest in more than one subject, obviously the shift takes place at another point of time. Nothing so wrong also. So if you take the same subject in civil services, if you are confident, it is an additional advantage because and some extent of preparation is already over. But that doesn't mean you can't take some other subject. You can always take a subject at any point of time. It doesn't matter actually, provided you should have a choice. You should have a clear vision that the civil service examination has one optional, and you have to select at least one optional.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
This is Jasintha from Senior Intermediate NEC, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, how does the changes in the new education policy help the present education system, sir?
Well, it's a very long topic. You need another seminar to speak. But I can advise you. You can go to I have two YouTube channels. In fact, I am more popular on YouTube than television these days. I have a Telugu YouTube channel, Professor K. Nageshwar, Prof. K. Nageshwar, where I speak on a very wide range of topics. I have spoken on new education policy. This is a channel which has more than 5,69,000 subscribers. So around 1 crore views I have every month, where I post videos with a remarkable regularity. So you can just type in Professor K. Nageshwar YouTube channel, search for Professor K. Nageshwar on new education policy. You will get my Telugu videos, which I talked about new education policy and higher education. There is a 20 or 30-minute video there. You can watch it. And there is another channel of mine, Professor K. Nageshwar English. It is called Professor K. Nageshwar English. So there is a 50-minute lecture on new education policy and higher education, which I have delivered at Palamuru University and posted here. So you can watch that lecture also. There is another lecture on education, which I have delivered to the faculty at National Institute of Technology, Varangal. So it is on inclusive higher education. So new education policy, there is a 50-minute lecture which in detail talks about several proposals of the new education policy and my critical opinion on them. So please, I also request all the students to subscribe to these two channels, to Prof. K. Nageshwar, Professor K. Nageshwar, and Professor K. Nageshwar English. If you subscribe and click on the bell button, you will get the notification whenever I post any video. There is a half an hour video on quantitative easing. There's a 15-minute video on helicopter money. So there's a half an hour video on Keynesian economics, because perhaps I am the one man who speaks a lot on economics also. So these lectures you can really listen, and if in fact your head of the department asked me to speak on new education policy itself. But I chose this topic precisely because this will be much more relevant to the students, but I would love to speak on new education policy on some other occasion.
Thank you, sir, for answering the questions of the students as well as the lecturers so patiently.
Is it over, ma'am?
Sir, thank you very much. If you have 2 minutes of time, we have 2 prize distributions here. On this occasion, we conducted few activities.
Can I leave the meeting?
So few minutes, 3 minutes.
Okay.
Now I request Mrs. Swapna from the Department of Economics to propose vote of thanks.
It is my privilege to propose vote of thanks. On behalf of Economics Department, our sincere thanks to Professor K.Swaroop, GARU, politician, political analyst, for accepting our invitation and enlightening our students on learning through observation, questioning, and argument, and how to improve their learning skills. Thank you very much, sir. We wholeheartedly thank our principal, Dr. Sister Jasintha Quadras, for her encouragement to organize this program. We thank our vice principals, Sister Inasia, Dr. Sister Inasia, Ms. K. Anuja, for their support. We thank the judges, Dr. Vijayawada ma'am, Head, Department of Zoology, Mrs. Samsri ma'am, Senior Faculty, Department of English, for giving their valuable time to us. We are thankful to Mrs. Rosa ma'am, Head, Department of Computer Science, and Mr. Prasad, IT team, for their technical support. We thank the faculty members of various colleges who have joined online and offline for this National International Education Day. And we thank Moshe for his support. Finally, thank all the participants for their active participation and quality of it.
Before we leave to sir, I want you to give a big applause to our sir. Thank you, students. Thank you, sir. Sir, definitely we will see you in the offline in our campus as things are okay. Hello, sir.
Sure, ma'am. We'll love to be there.
Yeah. Actually, we are planning in the past 1 year to bring you here with the Department of Economics and Political Science of Planning that one. But this year I was able to call you. It's okay, it's online also, but definitely you promise in front of all the above 500 students here that you will come to Stella College. We are eagerly waiting for you. Whenever we get an opportunity, we ask your assurance that you will be in Stella within few months. Thank you very much. That's very valuable time, and your speech was really inspiring. Definitely, our students learned many things, and they came to know that learning is a process, continuous process. It's not in the college or a school or like that. It's a lifelong learning, and they will keep everything in their mind, and they will lead their life, and they will achieve their targets. Thank you so much. Thank you. Namaste, sir.
Girls, now I'll announce the prize winners. We have conducted 2 competitions. One is essay writing competition, and the topic for essay writing competition is pros and cons of online classes during pandemic. And the winners of essay writing competition are: consolation prize goes to S. Ruby of Essex. I request our HOD madam to give the prize.
ఇది వచ్చాను.
Thank you, madam. Second prize was won by Shanti Priya of 3rd BA HET. First prize was bagged by Deekshita of Final Biotech.
Also, I would like to congratulate, thank Mohana, Dr. Mohana, because of your cooperation, coordination, motivation. They came to the department because science people, as you mentioned, there is no interdisciplinary. They won't enter into the arts departments at all. But with the Department of Economics, we conduct activities in such a way that we will involve all the department students. If it is not lockdown, we will have a population day, literacy day, all those things. We used to conduct elocution, essay, post-novating, and this also. But it happened so. So you encourage, you motivated, and they won the prize. So this is the real interdisciplinary activity. Thank you.
And the topic for poster making is impact of COVID-19 on Indian education system. The winners of poster making competition are: second prize was won by Babita Guru of Essex. And the first prize was bagged by A. Anuradha of 3rd BMS.
I request all the prize winners to stay back after the program by photograph.
Congratulations to all the prize winners and the participants. Participants will get a participant certificate. I request all the students to stand for national anthem. Thank you, students. Now you can go to your classes.
రికార్డు వచ్చాడు మేడం ఒక